to Beyond the Red Carpet. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce a lady who has been described as elegant and eloquent. And to that, I'd like to add intelligent and witty. The delightful Lady Colin Campbell. Lady C, such a pleasure to have you on today.
Thank you, Magda, but you've just made me need to shrink my head. It's rather swollen.
Oh, well, you are on and you have a fabulous YouTube channel that has been described as, the most intelligent people come to you because you don't spread rumors, you give us facts. And you give us your opinion on certain things from what you know. But let's start off with something a little close to home for me. I had a distant relative, a relative of my great-grandmother, who was a lawyer for Tsar Nicholas, and which is unusual in its own part because he's Jewish, and that was strange at that time. But there was an incident with the Tsar and George V, right before before or during the Russian Revolution, and George denied his first cousin sanctuary in Britain. And I know you told me earlier that you do know about this chapter in history. So can you enlighten us on this? What happened and how did they both feel?
Well, George V tried to blame Lloyd George, who was the Prime Minister of the day, and in fact thereafter called Lloyd George the murderer. But Lloyd George wasn't to blame. It was George V, and according to relations, Queen Mary is the one who, when the offer was suggested, she stepped on it because Queen Mary never forgave Alexandra for the way she used to belittle her because you see, Queen Mary was a serene highness. She was a par royal. She wasn't a full royal. Her mother was a full royal, but her father was a morganatic and therefore a par royal. And Alexandra, when they were both young, used to, and this, for instance, when the Techs, Queen Mary was a Tech, were visiting Darmstadt, etc. Queen Mary would be belittled by Alexandra, in those days, Princess Alix of Hesse, who would make her be very aware of the fact that she wasn't quite good enough and she wasn't one of them. And then when Nicholas and Alexandra were on the throne, and they came and visited England, he didn't actually step foot on English soil because of political problems, but they were at the Isle of Wight for the Cowes regatta. And Alexandra caused such a fuss because the girls' shoes had got damaged by the grass. And, you know, she was just a pill, and she was well known within the royal family to be a pill. And when I say the royal family, I mean all the royal families. And so Queen Mary didn't like her. And Queen Mary used, I suspect, the excuse of possible political agitation because they had demonized the Tsar in the British press. They demonized him for years as the autocrat of all the Russias, although by then he wasn't an autocrat because Russia introduced constitutional monarchy in 1905. But for all those reasons, Queen Mary is the one who is supposed to have put the kibosh on the idea, and with disastrous consequences.
Did George V, what was his feeling after the Romanovs were eliminated? Did he mention anything about, did he feel any guilt?
Oh, he certainly did, but he distanced himself and Queen Mary from the problem. And as far as he was concerned, it had nothing to do with them. It was Lloyd George's fault. And he used to call Lloyd George, the Prime Minister, a murderer. Well, in fact, if there was anybody who was the murderer, it was in fact him, and the murderess who'd set him up to it was Queen Mary.
Wow. Oh boy.
May I make a point? Because I have a wonderful portrait of the Tsarevich, which was smuggled out of Russia in the 1930s, and it's by a Jewish artist. So, you know, we think in the West that the Tsars were tremendously anti-Semitic, but they really weren't. There were problems sometimes with pogroms, etc., but they were not specifically anti-Semitic. They just would clamp down on disorderly factions of the population, including the Jews.
That's interesting, because when all my life growing up, knowing that I had a relative who was the lawyer for the Tsar, I'm thinking, why would he choose a Jewish person? But you say they weren't anti-Semitic.
Well, not to the extent that they didn't choose good artists and good lawyers, you know, which rather tends to show they weren't particularly anti-Semitic. Otherwise, they'd have been Hitlerian about the whole thing.
Right, right. Very good. Well, thank you for clearing that up. I really appreciate that. And I know you have so much wealth of knowledge about the history of the royals. But let's move up a little bit to the abdication of, of the king that led to the present queen's father becoming George VI. Now, I know the Queen Elizabeth's parents, especially her mother, Elizabeth, was very angry about this. And as you mentioned with Queen Mary, she felt, I guess you could use the word ruthless towards the former king and his American bride. Were they allowed, after they were sent away, and were they allowed back in the country at all?
Well, I mean, he used to visit occasionally and stay with his mother sometimes at Marlborough House. But, you know, there was tremendous disbelief that anybody could have given up such a splendid position. It was arguably the most splendid position in the world at the time. And to give it up for a woman twice divorced, you know, no great beauty, etc., etc. I think there was a tremendous sense of dismay. But also the Duke of Windsor, who I knew very slightly, but my stepmother-in-law knew him rather well, and a friend of mine called John Pringle, who founded Round Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of Round Hill in Jamaica. It was the most fashionable winter colony from the late 40s to the mid 70s. Bill and Babe Paley, Winston Churchill, Jack and Jackie Kennedy spent part of their honeymoon there, blah, 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 on and on. John used to be their ADC, or his ADC, to be more accurate, during the war when the Duke of Windsor was the governor of the Bahamas. So I got quite a bit of, aside from knowing him very slightly myself, I got quite a lot of information about him. And he used to say there would have been no abdication had there been no Elizabeth. And to an extent, he was right, because she and Cosmo Lang, who was the Archbishop of Canterbury, moved heaven and earth to shift him off the throne. Now, she would have liked everybody to believe that it was because she was going to be saving the monarchy. But the Duke of Windsor thought it was because she wanted to be queen. And she did get what she wanted. And I'll tell you what's really interesting, because I wrote a biography of Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. And in my research, I discovered that in 1929 in the New York Times, she was floating via her friends the notion that she and Bertie should be king and queen, and they would make better monarchs than the then the then Prince of Wales, who was at the time the most, in fact, he is to this day the most popular Prince of Wales who ever lived. And you could say they knew things about him that the public didn't know, but you could equally say, which he said, that she was a ruthlessly ambitious woman who wanted the top job for herself and got it. So who knows where the truth lies, but.
Well, that kind of has shades of what's going on now with the former royals that live in California. But I would rather keep them for later on. I want to, it has been leaked. Now, this is an unsavory topic, but I can't imagine a world without Queen Elizabeth. It has been leaked about what will happen upon her death. And people can go online and find out what happens in the hours and minutes afterwards. Charles automatically becomes king the moment she passes. Now, as I understand, he can select any one of his names, Charles, Philip, Arthur, George, to be king. Have you heard any rumblings about what his preference is going to be?
Well, it used to be thought that he was going to be King Charles III, but every now and then you hear a rumbling that he's going to be King George VII. I don't know that that's actually accurate. I mean, we need to wait and see. But just as how Elizabeth thought that her regnant name should be her Christian name, I wouldn't be surprised if he goes down the same route.
Well, everybody keeps talking about King Charles, and I'm actually hoping that he keeps that. We've known him as Charles for so long. All my life he's been Charles. So
I think it would be a big mistake for him to change his name to, and why George VII, unless he's going to be Arthur. You know.
Well, he could choose Philip, right? What are the odds that he would go with Philip after his father? Is that
Very
impossible?
doubtful. There's never been a King Philip of England or Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't have thought that it's very likely.
Okay. Well, we hope that he stays Charles because we know him as Charles, and that would be nice. Okay. Now, do the coronations usually take place? How often, how long afterwards? I know Elizabeth was about a year after how long till we have to wait for a coronation?
Well, I think it depends, it depends on many variables. It would depend on the time of the year. Coronations aren't great in winter because of, the weather. So I think, let's see, because if the rain should start in December, I think they could comfortably wait till June. If the rain starts in September, I think they might still be tempted to wait till June. But let's see. There's so many variables that it's, decisions like this are not made years in advance because there are variables that need to be considered, and then the most appropriate time is chosen.
Right. Well, yes, a lot of variables, as you say, go into all this. Now, this year is the Platinum Jubilee, and we don't want to jump over that to her demise because, like I say, I can't imagine a world without her. What can we expect to see during the summer months as far as celebrations?
Well, there are tattoos that are going to be taking place at Windsor because I'm going to one. So I know that there are tattoos. And garden parties, I mean, the usual things, street parties. The problem is the Queen isn't as strong as she used to be, and she's not as agile as she used to be. So I don't think we're going to be necessarily seeing walkabouts, which we have seen in the past. And, you know, things like river parades with her standing for hours on end. I'm trying to find a diplomatic way of putting it. I think her age needs to be factored into the equation. And you might find that a certain number of events will take place celebrating the reign with her not necessarily being in attendance.
Well, I urge all my viewers to go to True Royalty TV to watch the last Jubilee. It was amazing. I just could not believe all the wonderful things. And like you said, the river parades, just amazing celebrations for the Queen all over the country. It's really heartening to watch. It really is. So there's also something else on True Royalty TV about, well, does when this all happens as far as Charles ascending, does William automatically become Prince of Wales, or does that have to be bestowed?
No, he automatically becomes Duke of Cornwall. The monarch's heir is automatically the Duke of Cornwall, not the Prince of Wales. He has to be made, created, nominated, elected, not elected, but, you know, created by Prince of Wales by the monarch. So it's not an automatic thing. It's something that is given after a time, but he is immediately the Duke of Cornwall. So you might see that William moves from Cambridge to Cornwall, and then presumably there will be a bit of an interval. There might not be, because, you know, Prince Charles and Prince William are quite innovative. And I mean, they respect tradition, but they're not afraid of improvement as they see it. So I think you might find that they will decide at the time what's the most propitious moment for William to be created Prince of Wales. But I would be very surprised if he's not created Prince of Wales.
Okay, now excuse my ignorance on this, but we over here in across the pond don't have dukes and duchesses and princes. Does he automatically, when he becomes, if everything goes according to what we're talking about, and he becomes the Prince of Wales, does his dukedom and the Duke of Cornwall, does his Duke of Cambridge title go away?
No, it's subsumed. It returns to the crown.
Okay.
But no, it doesn't go away. He's moved up the ladder, you know, so to speak.
Great. Okay. How old do I guess they have to be married before they become dukes? William's children. They are absolutely adorable, by the way. I love watching them all. Do they become the Queen, excuse me, has bestowed upon them the titles of prince and princess. But dukedomship comes upon marriage, is that correct? Or is there another?
No, because King George VI was the Duke of York before he got married. He was created Duke of York by his father as a reward for dumping Sheila Loughborough. Sheila Loughborough was his married girlfriend. And she then, after they broke up, she became Lady Millbank. And after becoming Lady Millbank, she became Princess Dmitri of Russia, who my father-in-law used to say was really my ex-husband's true father. He was the Tsar's nephew. That's most likely just family nonsense, but he did used to say it. But so,
Well,
it's no, you can be made. Nowadays, princes are usually made dukes at the time of their marriage. It's to prevent and differentiate, because otherwise you would find that, say, had Harry remained Prince Harry, Meghan would have become Princess Henry of Wales. So, and that remains static with the grandchildren of the monarch. But with the children of the monarch, up to now, they've usually been made dukes, except, of course, Prince Edward was made the Earl of Wessex, as opposed to the Duke of Essex.
yes, and speaking of Prince Edward and Sophie, his delightful wife, they have 2 children who were not given any titles upon the request of their parents, but Lady Louise seems to be a charming young woman. She just turned 18, I believe.
She's actually growing into quite a good-looking girl, I actually have to say. You know, she's lucky, because when she was younger, you wouldn't have thought she was going to grow into a looker, but she's growing into quite the looker, which is great, you know. And
I like her. I really do. I think she's delightful, and she's very poised, and she's a good role model. And
lovely. Prince Edward's a really lovely man, and you know, so I'm not surprised that the children are, but they are actually prince and princess by right and by rank. They simply don't use the titles, but he is actually Prince James and she is Princess Louise. But they are known as Lady Louise Windsor and James Viscount Severn. So, but they're not really a lord and a lady. I mean, they are, but they're also prince and princess. So it's Charles's stab at modernization. I'm not sure I agree with all of Charles's forays into change. Let's put it that way.
my goodness, I think I need a map to figure out everybody. And I mean, no, they're all related and they all have different titles, which is very confusing to us over here because we haven't grown up with all that. But you're enlightening us. I do want to touch upon the modernization and the views of the population about the monarchy is kind of, I don't know, it's gone ups and downs throughout history. We know that. When there was a beautiful ceremony at, what's the name of the castle that Charles was investitured, the yes,
Castle?
that was a very beautiful ceremony. And do you think, given
total invention, of course.
Really?
No, the whole thing was totally invented. You know, the British are wonderful at ceremonial, especially traditional ceremonial, and the tradition started day before yesterday. But they're marvelous at it, and that's great, you know.
So what are the odds of William getting a beautiful ceremony like that, given the mood of the public right now? Do you think that will happen?
It might well happen. You know, I mean, his investiture is what it's called. It might well happen. It might be more low key. I mean, George V's investiture was not a huge deal, you know, but Charles's was. So, because of course they didn't remember what was done and how it was to be done. And so they just made it up as they went along, which is great.
Well, yeah, the British are very good at pomp and circumstance. I've got to tell you, you guys really put on shows. It's amazing. And we over here are really glued to the TV all the time because we're so impressed. We don't obviously want the monarch here, but we just love to watch it. And we're very invested in the royal family. That's why one of the reasons I wanted you on here to enlighten us as to all the different ins and outs of it, because we didn't grow up learning about it. You, on the other hand, are part of the aristocracy, excuse me. So you are plugged in and you know a lot about what is being said behind the scenes. And I would love to talk with you some more about some of the things going on currently. So if you'll stay tuned, we'll come back and do another 30 minutes with the current situation. Is that all right with you?
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Okay. Yes. Welcome back. We are speaking today with Lady Colin Campbell. To those in the know, she is Lady C, and I'm so excited that she's agreed to spend some more time with us today. You have written, how many books have you written, by the way?
Oh, I don't know, about 12 or 14. And about
right now I only have 3. So, but are you working on something else right now? Are you writing a new book?
Well, I'm too busy to be writing a book at the moment. I hate to admit, but it's true. You know, well, I wish I'd had the time, but I don't at the moment. And also, quite frankly, nothing interests me that much at the moment. I need to be interested in what I'm writing, at least to the extent that I think it's worthwhile.
Well, your last book that you wrote was Meghan and Harry, The Real Story. And I haven't gotten through that yet. But let's delve into this royal soap opera that we're living through right now. And a lot of people might not realize that this is a tumultuous time in the monarchy right now because of the antics of well, I don't lump Andrew in with it. I think it's more upsetting the Meghan and Harry portion of the family. Harry keeps bringing up that he's following his mother's legacy, which I think he's tarnishing it. What do you think?
Well, I think he doesn't entirely understand, because he was 2 weeks shy of his 13th birthday when his mother died. And really, there's been research done that says that until you're 14, there are residual effects, including melancholia. Yeah. So I think, in fairness to him, he was that little bit too young to have as realistic a view as would have been healthy for him to possess now. I think he's an attention seeker, as indeed was his mother, and as indeed is Meghan. So I think Diana absolutely hated people capitalizing on her and used to dump them as soon as she got a wind of the fact that they were even going to be tempted to capitalize upon her. So I cannot imagine that she's doing anything but spinning like a top in her grave every time Harry uses her to advance his latest agenda, the latest agenda usually being somewhat destructive of others. And I do think that she was a bit of a maverick, yes. And I think he sort of locked into that aspect of it. But she learned lessons that he has yet to learn. I mean, she definitely broke rules that it did not behoove her to break, and she made serious mistakes. I mean, for instance, that ghastly interview that she did with Martin Bashir, you know, she lived to bitterly regret it and understood it was a mistake. So, but Harry has replicated her errors as if they were positives, which is, I mean, it's bewildering to behold.
Definitely.
You know?
Well, the infamous Oprah interview, which spewed a lot of lies, definitely lies. They've been proven as lies. Have you heard? Does he regret doing that, or does he just?
No,
I can't see that.
Not at all, evidently. Not at all. You know, they are on a very regrettable trajectory. I don't think it's going to end well for either of them. I think it's not doing well as things stand. And Netflix and Spotify have parachuted in magicians to grab a few rabbits out of the hat. But let us see if they come up with rabbits or rats. And also, the fact of the matter is, neither Harry nor Meghan is actually an intrinsically interesting person. I mean, what is interesting is the awfulness of their trajectory. But, you know, to say that you would actually want to sit down and listen to anything either of them has to say, I mean, you'd be either an imbecile or uneducated or a mental defective of some sort, and maybe an emotional cripple as well. You know, I mean, they do have their admirers, but I mean, they are the sort of person that you wouldn't employ to clean your lavatory.
Well, talking about their admirers, I'm worried. I'm worried because they're called the Sussex Squad, and they are going after and being very vitriolic towards anybody that is pro-monarchy, pro-William and Catherine. They're spewing hate, and they're spewing ideas of getting revenge. I'm afraid somebody's going to get actually hurt or killed during this tumultuous time. Does that worry you at all?
Not at all. Not at all.
Really?
No, not at all. I've lived with publicity, much of it adverse, for nearly 50 years. You learn that when people, to be crude, do pass a stink bomb in your presence, you simply act as if it's not happened. You know, why condescend to even twinkle your nose? And if something untoward or destructive or, God forbid, life-threatening should happen to someone, undesirable and regrettable as that would be, maybe it would call time on this very destructive game. You know,
I hope it doesn't get to that. Yes.
They don't seem to understand that freedom of speech, which of course Harry has said is bonkers, and Meghan clearly agrees. I mean, they don't seem to understand that freedom of speech means that people have the right to disagree with them. You know, they are really very dictatorial personalities, and it's very dangerous, because should their beliefs be accepted across the board, people would be muzzled. I mean, they try to muzzle people. They go to great lengths to muzzle people. You know, they use every resource that is available to them to muzzle people. Well, can you imagine if people like that were in charge of setting the rules? Everybody would have to be drawing breath to the depth that they require. They are very dangerous people, and their followers are not only irresponsible, but let us see what happens. Because, but no, I don't condescend to acknowledge the existence of the rabble. I'm sorry.
Well, here's a quote from Princess Diana. My first priority will continue. This was after she left the family. My first priority will continue to be our children, William and Harry, who deserve as much love and care and attention as I am able to give, as well as an appreciation of the traditions into which they were born. Now, Harry's just kind of ripped that up. He doesn't care about his traditions. He doesn't care about anything. And as you said, Diana is probably twirling in her grave. Does he realize what a mockery he's made? Or does that just go over his head because he's so self-centered?
He's not very bright, and he's very self-centered, and he's very immature. And he, by his own admission, has had serious emotional and substance issues, as well as he obviously has personality problems, you know. But Harry was never anti-tradition. Meghan is the one who, even when they were in England, people, in fact, in my book, Meghan and Harry, the real story, I go into how appalled people were by the fact that she led the charge to mock tradition. And she did it in practically every way, including at dinner parties. People stopped asking them to dinner because they would show up at a dinner party and they would insist on being seated together, notwithstanding the fact that married couples are never seated together. She would have her tongue down his ear in the middle of dinner, and you know, they were as if getting ready to rot before the pudding was served. I mean, people just thought, and if anybody objected or you know, didn't, well, I'm trying to find a polite way of putting it. Let's just, I think you've got the picture. They would actually, they would be furious. And so people just stopped asking them. And they showed absolute contempt for all of the civilities and the courtesies which govern acceptable civilized behavior. And we can see it in their actions, you know. I mean, it's not only in terms of their demeanor, it's in terms of the execution of their lack of values. But
anything that would come up would be racist. They would play the race card. But you know, as we saw for the spectacle, she calls it a spectacle, but it was that wedding, which I can't believe she would actually say the word spectacle. But everybody embraced them. They were all excited. We were looking forward to having her as representative, with an American representative.
An American princess, stepping into Princess Grace's shoes.
Well, she's actually been a detriment and an embarrassment to Americans. And I know with Wallis Simpson and Meghan Markle, I hope the British people don't think all Americans are are out to ruin the monarchy.
I have to tell you, I knew Wallis Windsor slightly, and she was very much a lady. And she was the archetypal royal duchess by the time I knew her. In the early days, as my stepmother-in-law, Margaret, Duchess of Argyll, used to say that when she first met Wallis, Wallis was very much a sort of middle-class mouse. And by the end of it all, Wallis was the absolute end in chic. She was the greatest hostess on earth. Everybody conceded that there was no better hostess on earth than the Duchess of Windsor. So you can't compare Wallis Windsor, who was, for all the negatives about her and whatever failings she had, she was truly, by the end of it all, impeccable. This girl, I'm sorry, is, you know, one step above something that is thrown out by the garbage man. I mean, she is inelegant, she's vulgar, she is unsophisticated, she's pretentious in the most appalling way. She lectures everybody. The Duchess of Windsor never ever lectured anybody. You know, it's very sad, because had Meghan Markle had the character and the intelligence and the spirit to embrace the role that was given to her, she would now be well on the way to being the most popular woman on earth.
Yeah, she definitely, she threw away an amazing opportunity, amazing opportunity.
But then, of course, she wasn't going to get paid to shake the hands of mayors and to cut ribbons. You know, she didn't understand that public service doesn't mean that the public serve you. It means that you serve the public. That's the thing she didn't understand.
When you think about it, she didn't need to get paid, though, because she had anything she wanted, basically. I mean,
No, sorry to cut you.
Okay.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, you know, any hustler knows that if they're giving the milk away, they've got to stay on the farm or in the dairy. If they want to move to another farm or another dairy, there might be no milk. And therefore, she needed to move him away from where royal duties were not paid, but every expense was taken care of. I mean, she spent in the time that she was in the royal family, £2.6 million on clothes, which was more than every single royal queen, empress, princess, duchess, all collectively put together. She spent more than Queen Letizia, Queen Mathilde, Queen Maxima, Catherine Cambridge, you name it. I mean, so, but any day she wants to leave, she needs a pot of gold. If she doesn't have, and she understood that Sarah York, when she left with £300,000. And the only sensible reason that anybody can come up with that makes absolute sense as to why she had to get into the whole business of commercialism and monetization was that she needed community property, and she wasn't ever going to get it when she was in England. She has it. Let's seize it. They've not been as successful as they thought, because I don't know if you know, but all those huge figures that are bandied about are pie in the sky nonsense put out by their PR to up their ante, because they haven't made the tens and hundreds of millions that they would like you to believe. So she if she leaves, she's most likely going to leave with a lot less than she hoped to leave with. But she'll leave with more than she would have left had she stayed in Britain.
And performed her duties and been given expenses. I mean, she was in a wonderful position, but not if you have one eye on the divorce lawyer.
That's a shame, and an incredible opportunity is I can't wrap my head around it. But anyway, it is what it is, and I would unfortunately it's been a year since Prince Philip passed away. He was beloved all around the world. And towards the end of his life, did he know about the Oprah interview? I know he was very sick at the time. Was he aware of what was said?
Yes, he did. I don't think he knew the full knowledge of it, but he definitely knew of something of it. They ruined the peace and serenity and the harmony and the lovingness that everybody else had for Prince Philip. They ruined his death. They ruined his last days. There's no way around it. They have ruined the Queen's and the other members of the royal family's grieving process. Look at the way the Queen is visibly fading before our eyes. You surely don't think that Harry and Meghan's tremendous antics don't have a lot to do with it. I mean, it's one thing to take the view that Prince Andrew was victimized by an opportunistic tart, and therefore he had no choice in what was happening. He was reactive as opposed to active. But Harry and Meghan have been proactive. So it's one thing to have to put up with the odium of a son being accused of unsafe things when you know the son is innocent. Well, she knows he's innocent. I know he's innocent too. Anybody who has any knowledge of Prince Andrew knows he's innocent. His taste doesn't run in those directions. So I leave it at that. But everybody also knows that Harry and Meghan sit down concocting plans, plots, and schemes to skew everybody. It's sick. It's sick and it's sad. And let's see what happens. But they certainly ruined Prince Philip's last days. And they've ruined the whole grieving process. And they are ruining the Queen's Jubilee year and the last days of her life.
That's so sad. That is so sad. Is there anybody over there that can sue them for elder abuse? Because that is what they are. They're elder abusers at this point.
Well, I would agree with you, but it's not possible to sue for elder abuse. What they could be sued for is defamation. Unfortunately, they believe that the royal family will never go down that route. My feeling is they should go down that route. Harry and Meghan are extremely aggressive and using every tool at their disposal to muzzle people and create a narrative and create an image of themselves that is contradictory in terms of their actions. And I think the lawyers should at some point do something. Of course, they're not going to, because they would regard it as upping the ante and turning a circus into a fiction. But I actually have had experience in my life of very disturbed people who set out to damage you, and I can tell you, they're wrong. You need at some point to fight fire with fire. And if you do not do it, you end up at the end of the day being more damaged than you would be if you fight fire with fire. Because the average person, the average onlooker, it's like the average child knows when somebody's lying. They know the difference between right and wrong. And as long as you remain sure and do nothing, and let people figure it out for themselves, people might think, oh, well, they're weak, or what's wrong, or they're covering up something. There comes a point where you need to fight fire with fire. The lawyers don't agree with that. So, let us see.
I wish they would take your view, because something needs to be done. These people are just getting out of hand, and as you point out in your YouTube channel, I urge everybody to subscribe to your YouTube channel, because we learn so much. Seriously, I look forward to your shows every time that you come on. And people have said, I wish you could do it every day, but I know it's a lot of work for you to do that.
I do 3 times a week, and that's more than enough. It gives me practically no time for anything else. And it is but one of the many obligations I have in my life, because I have a cost to maintain and run.
Well, as viewers can see, this is a picture of your castle, Castle Goring. Can you explain to us where that is, where you live?
Yes, it is near the south coast. It's between Brighton and Arundel. It's 3 miles from the coast. You can see the sea from the windows in the family drawing room. It was built by Sir Bysshe Shelley, who was the poet Percy Bysshe Shelley's grandfather. It was conceived as the ancestral home for the Shelley family. Then he, of course, drowned at Lerici, age 29. His widow Mary, who wrote Frankenstein, she leased it to Sir George Peachel, who was Queen Victoria's equerry. Then she sold it to him, and I bought it from one of his descendants. But it's magical. It's got wonderful light. It's a beautiful place. And it's small enough to be manageable. It's not a huge house. It's a relatively modest sized house.
It looks big to me. It really does look big. I would love to see it if I ever come over there. But you do have a tour. Pardon me?
Please do.
I'd like to hear on this. You do have a beautiful tour of that on YouTube, so people can go on and watch that as well. You are a fascinating woman, and I look forward to having you back in the future to talk more. But like I said, your book, Meghan and Harry, the real story. But I managed to find the real Diana and Diana in private. What order should I read those in?
Well, Diana in private came out first.
Okay.
And that was very written, bearing in mind certain conventions. So it's in terms of the information, everything I said turned out to be accurate. I was roundly abused and lambasted at the time of publication. But everyone had to end, all my critics ended up eating crow. And I have to tell you, I loved it as a gag swallowing. Then the Red Hand was posthumous.
Okay.
And So I think one is historically interesting because it was written in 1992. The marriage was still intact, but only superficially intact. And I knew she wanted a divorce. I knew she wanted to leave him. I knew she had a lover. I knew he had a girlfriend. But I also knew that she's the one who stepped out first. And I wrote it in the book. Some of the press were extremely abusive and said I didn't know what I was talking about. Well, Diana herself finally confessed that yes, she had a romance with Barry Manatee. And so she's the one who stepped out first. He didn't. He, according to her, I think she should know, he never touched her. Charles never touched her once he discovered that she stepped out with Barry Manatee. And she couldn't understand why. And I had to point out to her that while a man might, I'm trying to find a diplomatic way of putting it because it's on this channel. While a man might tolerate his wife having an affair with an equal, no gentleman would tolerate his wife having an affair with staff. And she actually said that she didn't understand why that would be. When Princess Margaret, and she meant to mention another princess, had both had affairs with their bodyguards.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to her, well, it couldn't be simpler. They're born princesses, you weren't.
Interesting. Well, I am looking forward to delving into these books over the next few weeks, and I would love to have you come back to talk about your books and
what did you ask you?
And what you brought up within them, because I know there's a lot of information there that has proven to be reality, even though you wrote it when people were disagreeing with it. But I would love to speak with you about your books in the future. And in the meantime, gosh, it's just been a pleasure to have you on today. We will get you back very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, my dear. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. God bless.
Thank you. Same to you. And I want to express my sincere thanks to Lady Colin Campbell for joining us today for an amazing discussion about the royals past and present. And as I said, I highly urge viewers to look into her YouTube channel for more information. She is such a wealth of knowledge and a wonderful, delightful woman. I will look forward to visiting with you viewers on the next time we take another look beyond the red carpet.
Well,
thank you. You're such a treasure. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this little chat. If you have, please like, share, subscribe, and if you'd like to be notified of future postings, click that notification bell. Alrighty, I'll